Good evening to one and all who have joined us today. This is the 54th show, which is a part of a series brought to you by TLR Now. TLR Now, which is a niche in coaching, training, and mentoring service provider, and is based out of Pune, India. They have got chapters in Sri Lanka, Oman, Nepal, Bhutan, and they're expanding further. And the good news is that the systems are all decked up with a growing network of 80 plus mentors across domains and locations. TLR Now is here to offer a confluence of what will help individuals excel in their personal and professional lives by enhancing life skills. TLR shows like this one brings together subject experts and share insights on various aspects of life which have the potential to transform life through structured and meaningful ways. A little about myself. I am Dr. Preeti, a management professional, a columnist, a trainer, sometimes an amateur painter, at times a blogger, based in Muscat, Oman for about a year and a half now. And I'm currently exploring a gamut of interests and passions and searching for my own life's meaning. Today's session is about VUCA world, VUCA love. The term VUCA that stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity has been around quite a while for now, over 3 decades to be precise. The concept that originated with students at the US Army War College to describe the VUCA situation of the world after the Cold War was first used in 1987 and was based on the leadership theories of Warren Bennis and Bert Nanus. And it was about the leaders and the strategies they devised on taking charge of the situation. So the relevance of VUCA has never been felt and experienced as much as it is being done today. The VUCA world having an impact and the level of COVID-19 pandemic has never appeared earlier. It has affected the way we work, the way we connect, and the way we relate. The relationships, our relationships are the most integral and essential part of our lives. No doubt that our mental health and our personal well being are tied up in the quality of our relationships, be it personal or at work. And the VUCA has not spared us and our relationships also. So how is it relevant today? How to live in the VUCA world? How to embrace its challenges in terms of the relationships we have today? A lot of these questions, and to explore this concept further in today's relationship context, in the next 1 hour or so, I shall be taking you through such questions and many more, once again in conversation with the lady with the soothing voice and an ever smiling face, Sujata Ameya from Hyderabad. Sujata is a couples therapist and a self actualization coach, the author of When the Beloved Calls. Sujata holds an MPhil in clinical psychology from NIMHANS and has maintained a private practice in Hyderabad, India. Using transpersonal and integrative therapies, she has helped over 14,000 clients, which includes individuals, couples, families, and groups over the past 29 years. Conflict as a catalyst for self discovery and to journey through heartbreak as a path for self actualization are her ways of working. Sujata, I welcome you to this session.
Thank you, Preeti. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be back here with you.
Yes. It's been so long that we've had some insightful discussions with you, Sujata, and I think almost more than 3 months now. And so good to have you on the show and listening to you such a way that seems to be sorting out a lot of problems by just listening to you. So a lot of things are being sorted out just by listening to you. Seriously, and
Thank you. Thank you so
it's great having you with us and guiding us through such sensitive issues and crucial element of our lives, our relationships. So, Sujata, straight away, heading to the concern at hand, most of us from the business and the management background are familiar with the concept of VUCA. And you are a psychotherapist. You've worked around more than almost 3 decades now. And I'm sure you must have seen different age group of people having different outlooks towards the concept of VUCA, the life, and its issues. So what is your take on VUCA?
All right. Thank you, Preeti. So let me just mention that I'm really happy to be back here with you, talking to you. As I always say, a good conversation equally depends on a good listener and a person who's asking questions in a way that brings out the depth in a speaker. So thank you very much. And also thank you for setting the context by sharing the history of the word VUCA. To be honest, I was not aware of the different people or the theories that it is attributed to. I just know the acronym, and I know I know the acronym and I know what it stands for. So to answer your question, let's go to slide number 2. I think with a picture, it's easier to share what I really think about this.
Absolutely.
So can we have slide number 2, please?
Yes.
Yes. So I'd like you to wait till I ask you to click again. Yeah.
Okay.
So this is simply to set the context that all the models that I use to understand a problem and also to find a resolution for the problem are based in this 5 elements model that I think it's just evolved by itself over the years of my work. I can't say I have evolved it. The 5 elements are universal. There's no debate or argument about that. However, what they have led to is what I call, as you know from our conversation last time, what I call the donut and bow tie models, and we'll see some of those. So this being the background, could you go to the next click, please? Let's talk about how this VUCA is actually going on in our world. So for those of us who are new to this acronym, V, please click again. V stands for volatility. U stands for uncertainty. C stands for complexity. And A stands for ambiguity. Now, whatever little I have understood and worked with in this framework, I have kind of come up with very brief definitions that help you understand what each thing actually creates for us as human beings, right? So volatility, if you can click on the button, it has a definition of this is a situation where the cause and effect are rendered irrelevant because of unexpected disruptions.
Yes.
Yeah.
Stability.
Then if you go to the next one, uncertainty, I think I'm not able to see what is written there. Huh? This is
Cause and effect unknown.
unknown, but cannot be controlled. Yeah, we know the cause, we know the effort, but it's really not in our control. Then when we go to the complexity aspect, next button, here what happens is the cause and effect are complicated by many interconnected different parts and different variables.
Multiplexity.
Yeah, so there's just too much happening there. Too many things are contributing to it.
Yes.
And then ambiguity refers to a cause and effect that is poorly understood. It is the situation where you don't even know that you don't even know. Yeah, that is what it is. Now, this is with regards to how I think the management gurus and experts understand and explain it and apply it in their own, scenario. But I think as a relationship therapist or as a psychologist, I'm looking at, so therefore, what does this lead to? So if you can click the next button, this kind of a volatility creates a sense of instability inside you. Of course, it makes the environment unstable as well, but for you as an individual, you feel unstable. The second yes, that creates a sense of not being in control. Because see, when you know if I do this, it'll result in this, when that certainty has been taken out, you feel out of control. Yeah. And then when you are dealing with too many variables that you can't control, it gives a sense of overwhelm. Your mind is just not able to process the amount of information or the interconnectedness of the information. And lastly, it leaves you feeling extremely confused. Yeah. So at a logical, rational level, your mind is in a state of instability, feeling completely out of control, overwhelmed, and confused. Now, this is the state in which you know engage with work, you engage
Mhm.
with people, you engage with families, and you
Mhm.
also engage with intimate relationships, and ultimately even the way you engage with yourself. Now, I want
Mhm.
to understand this a little more deeper. If we can go to the next slide, please, the third slide.
Mhm.
Here, what happens is we have to also look at, as a result, what are the emotions that are evoked. Yeah.
Mhm.
So, constant sense of instability is going to evoke the emotion of fear. Yeah. And a constant sense of not being in control is going to evoke the sense of frustration and sometimes
Mhm.
even anger.
When you're not in
I'm
control.
sure we can all relate to this in various scenarios, including
Yes.
relationships, right?
Mhm.
And when there is too much complexity that I'm feeling overwhelmed, it gives me a
Mhm.
tremendous sense of doubt, self doubt, and doubt about
Mhm.
everything. I don't know what I'm standing on. I don't know what to expect. So there's just a lot of doubt. And
Mhm.
lastly, when I'm perpetually confused, I am left with a sense of worrying as to now what will happen, what do I look at, how do I experience. So there's just a lot of these difficult emotions that are aroused as a result of every day facing the four impacts of VUCA. Yeah. Now, once again, consider that holding these unprocessed emotions within you, when you engage with either work or with human beings, you're not going to bring out the best in each other. You are going to actually
Absolutely.
put the worst in each other. I want you to understand another thing. When you have these difficult emotions sitting in your inner space, the way your body and energy behaves is in contraction. So it
Mhm.
is not open and expanded and receptive and creative and spontaneous and joyful. It is held back, doubtful, withdrawn, hesitant, just in defense, trying to somehow maintain and protect rather than create and
Absolutely.
produce. Yeah.
Mhm.
So in this way, when you engage either with a task at hand or with a person at hand, this is going to cause major trouble. Yeah. So this is what I would like to put our discussion in the context of. Now you can ask me further questions, Preeti.
Yeah, so Sujata, I mean, looking at this picture, like we had this, all these elements, like you said, and you come up with the whole thing out of so many years of experience. So, is it like VUCA? I mean, I'm sure the term has come out now,
Mhm.
but as per my understanding, it must have been there all throughout our lives. Our ancestors must have faced it in a different degree, maybe, or rather than degree, I would say more of a acceptance of that fact. Now we are aware of the terms, so now we can say that this is a VUCA world. So I mean, my question to you is that are they overlapping, or like all these VUCA are going to be one at a time? All of them are overlapping, or probably one or two here and there. So is it like all the time happening, all of them?
So I would like to put it this way. In fact, it's very much what you have said. I think human life, the way we exist in this world and the way life plays out in general, whether it was 500 years ago, 300 years ago, 30 years ago, or even now, these elements have always operated. We've
Mm-hmm.
never been sure of what, like, let me give you an example. In a relationship context, suddenly somebody is diagnosed with a life threatening illness. There's your
Mm-hmm.
volatility. Your stability goes for a toss. What you assumed will be okay now is not okay. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Similarly, you had a job, everything was good. Now suddenly they've started layoffs in the company, so there's uncertainty. So these things have happened all along. I think we have coined a term now, and we
Yeah,
believe that by naming it and by labeling it, we have better control over it.
yeah.
Actually, it is not.
Because now we
It,
have
it,
theories,
it,
studies.
it has to do with a basic understanding that uh, understanding a situation and doing the best you have to be able to
Mhm.
handle it is in your control, but the
Yeah,
outcome is never in your control.
is
So
not
I
in our
think
control.
that thin distinction between I can control effort, but I have to let go outcome. I think that fundamental, eternal, perennial wisdom that we've
Of course.
always been taught about, even the Bhagavad Gita is quoted all the time for that.
Yes.
That if we are not in touch with that basic reality, then we are in VUCA all the time, all the
All the
time.
time.
I can be in VUCA even in cooking a small meal or just going out for a small grocery or doing my everyday little emails. Anything can create that experience for me. So yes, I agree with you.
Yes, so then the theories and the coining of the term, and again the recognition of this concept is probably giving us more chances of working towards it in a better way, right?
Yeah.
So okay, yeah, so that definitely sets the context, right? And I'll move on to the main part of our discussion today. Uh, I'll take this further. Like, in what way VUCA has affected the domain of relationships? Like, we're talking about relationships here today. Otherwise, VUCA is a vast concept to be discussed in an hour session. And so, what is the connect of VUCA's world with the psychotherapy, which is your professional domain also, Sujata? So, what is what is the effect on the domain of the relationships precisely?
Right. So as I said, I think we've had trouble in relationships all along. All along, my parents' generation, my generation, the millennial generation, everywhere. I think we've had relationships have gone through challenges all along. But I think right now the context of the pandemic has
Hmm.
created a very acute sense of VUCA.
Mhm.
Meaning, as I've said in our previous conversation also, it has brought us face to face with many things which we had the luxury of not really looking at or not addressing, because we had spaces to go to and go away from the challenges and the things that we keep putting under the carpet and letting the elephant grow in the room.
Hmm.
We no longer have that option. So
Mhm.
therefore, the same things that have existed for years, for decades, now seem very accentuated and very aggravated. Yeah. So this is one part. Meaning nothing extraordinarily new is happening, but what has been happening has come to relief, has come to highlight and accentuation. So it all
Mhm.
looks like, oh my God, this is too bad. Something crazy is going on. Like there is this article going around that says the mental health profession has surged because everyone is now seeking counseling and therapy.
We
Well,
talked about
I
it
wish,
last
yeah, I
time.
wish everyone had sought counseling and therapy right at the beginning when issues had begun, without waiting for something to magnify it for you, right?
Of course.
So that is it. That is one part. Now, another thing that has been happening is, especially with the newer generation, especially with the urban populace, I would say, the whole concept of stability of relationships is at stake. Not that marriage gave it much stability, at least not necessarily in terms of emotionality, but it gave you a stability in other ways. Like there was a social stability, there was a legal stability, there was some amount of financial stability, role stability. At least we knew that if you get married, this is what is to be expected, and this is
Hmm.
what you're supposed to deliver. There was some broad guidelines that everyone followed, and it worked, right? But now with this new approach to questioning everything, which is healthy but also taken to an extreme can cause a lot of trouble, the sense of stability in relationships has been badly affected. So my practice is full of youngsters in their mid 20s, late 20s, early 30s, even newly married people up to the mid 30 range, right? Feeling completely unsettled, unhappy, in despair, very distraught, because whatever they step on, it is not sure whether that's a rock or that's a floating quicksand, because
Mhm.
everything is open. Are we committed? Yeah, I think so, until we find somebody else. Am I dating this one? Yeah, but I'm also thinking of dating the other one. So that kind of thing has created a VUCA where VUCA need not exist, because
Mhm.
if you follow certain basics of making something work, you need to have the groundwork and the framework
Mhm.
commonly understood and commonly lived up to. You have to go by it. Like you want to play a game, let's say. If you want to play football, there are certain rules. If you don't follow those rules, then it is no longer football. It is like, amateurs just tossing the ball around with their feet. Then it won't be fun. It won't be fun. You will not know whether you played well. You will not
Yes.
know whether you won the game. You will not know why you failed the game. Without rules, nothing works. Same applies to relationships as well. But somehow people seem to think that it need not apply. And therefore, we have massive amounts of VUCA going on in relationships as well. Yeah. So I hope that answers your question.
Yes, definitely. So that again, as I said, like relationships are integral and essential part of our lives. And again, I would say mental health and our personal well-beings are tied up to the quality of relationships. We were talking about it at length last time also. So be it at work or be it at personal level. So Sujata, I assume that after some time there is an angle of closeness or intimacy involved in a relationship, in any
Mhm.
relationship. Degrees may vary, but the relationship, when it gets intimate or you get closer, it the relationship will get a whole together different meaning, as per my understanding also and experience also. I'm sure many of us would agree here that, as I'm saying it. So, what has been the impact of VUCA on close relationships, particularly if we talk about in case of intimate relationships, as per
Right.
you?
Right. So you brought in a very critical point and also opened a Pandora's box, right? So as I said last time, intimate relationship is the only stage where all our inner demons and skeletons will come out and dance. Yeah, that's a given. That's a given. The best of you can operate in all spaces of life, but the unprocessed, unknown shadow part of you will only come out in an intimate relationship. That's a given. There's no two ways about it. Now, that being the case, imagine what might be happening now, because there is no time or space or assurance or surety or security for this to even evolve or bloom into anything. So, way before anything can happen, the shadows are coming out before the good parts of us are coming out into a relationship. So,
Mhm.
if you and I have a assurance that we are in this together for a while, then I think we will feel safe enough to bring out the better parts of us for each other. But if
Mhm.
I'm constantly wondering and calculating, will she be there? Will she not be there? Should I really
Mhm.
invest? Should I not invest? Is that too much time I'm spending? Maybe I shouldn't be spending. Maybe it's a waste of time. Maybe she's going to walk away someday. With
Yes.
that amount of insecurity, you're actually living in those four emotions that I pointed out: fear, anger, worry, and doubt.
Mhm.
All the
Mhm.
time. You're angry because someone has not lived up to what you were assuming, and
Mhm.
you're also worrying because you're not doing what you said you would do also in the
Mhm.
relationship. So
Mhm.
because of that, it is actually aggravating everything that can go wrong in an intimate relationship very early on.
Mhm.
That's the It's happening very, very early on. See, earlier, previously, long term committed relationships, including marriage or cohabitation, issues would begin a little later, a few months later, a year later, 2 years later, whatever. But now it's like even before the relationship can be formed and called a committed relationship, all these issues are playing out. So
Mhm.
that's the real tragedy of all this. There's no safety or security to stand on in what even relationships that you call personal, close, or intimate.
Mhm. So that's definitely that is the Pandora's box, and I'm gonna open another Pandora's box for you in my next question for you, Sujata. It is going to be about, like you said, that mid-30s wala and the teenagers, the things. So the question is that is this the impact seen mostly amongst the younger generation? Like you've labeled the younger generation as up to mid-30s also, and like I'm talking about the millennials and teenagers specifically. So I would request you to please answer this one separately for
Mhm.
millennials and the
Mhm.
teenagers, one by one, if you can.
Okay. All right. So let's start with the millennials, because the teenagers, I think, follow them. No? They
Yes,
feel they are the role models.
I
So what
can't
are
say.
the no,
Not
they
sure.
do. Yeah.
Can't say. Yeah.
So what are the millennials doing? I mean, this is not to label them, this is not to judge them, but this is to do with acknowledging how things are turning around and how what is going on actually. So, what do? They sign up on not one but half a dozen dating apps. Then they will keep checking everything every day, trying to assess who is worth their time and their while, who is worth their while. That is how it goes. They have a checklist of boxes to tick off, and whoever meets those, they go and meet the person, find out. Sometimes they it clicks, they talk, they go on a few dates, they do some coffee or lunch or something. Sometimes they don't do all that, they directly just engage in physical intimacy, and then they feel this is not working out, they back off, they don't know how to back off, they want tips on what is a good way to let somebody down without feeling too guilty about it. So there is this attitude of dealing with relationships exactly the way you would deal with buying something, buying a product, like buying a car or a house or a washing machine or something like that. It is not, in fact, just the other day I was saying this on another talk. Marketing and advertising professionals keep claiming, and they're right also, that most of the decisions we make are actually emotional. Logic is used to justify them later, right? So even in buying a house or a car or whatever, I don't think we are making rational checklist kind of decisions all the time. It's something that just clicks, something where you feel a connection, a resonance, and then you do it. Now, how can you do this with relationships? Relationships, the foundation of it is a felt sense of resonance that you feel with the other person. Some vibe matching, some click, some pull, something that you feel within, where you feel drawn to the person. And this is not about having some mad attraction and some extraordinary chemistry. It's not even about that. It's just about a sense of feeling connected and drawn to the person. To then explore that in a slow and gentle way, in a respectful way, and then see what evolves and then take it forward one step at a time. But that's not how the millennials are approaching it. Oh, what millennials? There are a lot of older people also doing the same thing, right? Because what drives us is an image or a picture of what we think we want. And no one actually fits that picture, right? Versus if we can look at how is this moment unfolding with this person, who am I being in the presence of this person, is a very good question to ask if you want to think of a long-term relationship. Who you are being in the presence of this person, if that is true to you, if that is the best of you, if that is the whole of you, if that is the uplifted version of you, if that is the expanded version of you, then I think that there is something there. There's something in that person, right? It's not the other way around. It's not like you check where how tall are they, how good looking are they, how's their skin, how's their hair. That's not the point there. The point is here. What you call love is felt here, not there. Yeah. So if you're in touch with yourself, then the way you will proceed in the relationship will be different, and the way the relationship will proceed will also be very, very fulfilling, very satisfying. Yeah. So this is as far as our youngsters are going. The teenagers, of course, have to follow the senior generation for them. So they are actually in a huge hurry to do the same thing. They want to get on Instagram at the 10th birthday or something. They want to start, what are all this? They have Snapchat and some all kinds of apps and platforms that they want to get into and talk about this and that, and how many likes am I getting, who is following me. So the whole experience of relationship has become bereft of the experiential component. It has become a competitive kind of a space which is judged by a number of likes, like we used to judge our performance in school by the number of marks we got. It has become like that. So I think it is tragic, it is sad.
But that's more
It
of that's more of FOMO. That's more of FOMO in case of teenagers,
Yes,
fear of missing
yes.
out, all the time checking the phone notification, Aya, so you have to check it, you have to respond. So that's more of FOMO in case of teenagers, I believe.
But you know what? Let's not assume that is happening only to teenagers, huh? I
I
have people in
I
their
agree.
40s and 50s and 60s also who, so see, the form of FOMO has changed.
Mm-hmm.
In the previous generation, the FOMO has to do with log kya kahenge. What will people say? That used to be the FOMO, isn't it?
Now FOMO has changed.
Now we just have the electronic version of it. So everyone is in FOMO, meaning will I miss out on something? Will I miss out on membership in a group? Will I miss out
Mm.
on being seen as somebody? Will my status get affected? What will people say if I don't perform the wedding or thing in a certain way? It was always there. It was always there. We just have a different tool to do it now, and we are getting onto it sooner and sooner. We didn't see, at least my generation, when we were teenagers, we actually relished the fact of not caring. Rebellion and saying, I don't mind, we don't bother with such things was a plus point. Now, the poor kids, starting from age 7, 8, 9, they do care. They care a lot about how many likes they're getting and who's following them. So it is just very, very tragic. That's all I can say. And it is making all counselors and therapists quite rich because they also can't really do much. This is a whole pandemic that is going on at a social level about how we have come to deteriorate relationships by treating
Mm.
them also as some kind of products. So that is what I would say. Yeah.
Right. So it's got a lot of things basically, not just a single angles, I believe. A lot of things to it, Sujata. And that brings
Yeah.
me to my next sequence, which is we'll talk about the families here. What is the impact of this on families, especially children? I will come to another segment. Again, specifically, if I were to talk in the present context of the current pandemic, which is, I personally feel it's totally VUCA,
Mhm.
totally VUCA. I mean, the children who are seeing and experiencing the world with a face mask on in such early years,
Mhm.
they will probably know this is the only normal. Maybe they will react to not wearing a face mask, for example, after some time. So they've got a lot to process and lot to groom ahead. So in that context, the impact of the VUCA, which we were talking about, especially in context of children, Sujata.
Right. So I think you've brought in a very important point in terms of the those who were born this year, earlier this year, just last year,
Yeah,
children who are below 5 or 6 years, I
yeah,
think.
yes.
It's a very, very, very unfortunate situation that they
Mm,
just can't be free. I agree that is and I think we'll have to wait to see what is going to be the long term impact of it. Of course, one hope is that as randomly and suddenly as the corona appeared, there is always this silent hope that it also similarly disappears and we are back to a world where wearing a mask no longer remains mandatory. I truly hope so. But I think it is not just the wearing of the mask. It is about not having direct physical contact with same age playmates that is going to have very deep psychological ramifications, I'm afraid.
mm,
See, we are already feeling it. We are not able to go out as much as we feel like. We can't freely go and ask for a hug or get a hug without discussing
mm,
whether it is okay to hug. So the basic social psychological need of connectivity and being in the same space and feeling secure, and the physicality and the expression of affection, which are very critical to mental health in general of all ages, but also especially children. See, even things
mm,
like falling on the ground, playing in the sandpit, pulling each other's hair,
mm,
punching each other, getting little bruises and hurts and pains. All of these would go into how resilient a child becomes psychologically. So I'm afraid
mm.
all of this is not going to happen. At least not happening right now. So it will have certain impacts. But I think as far as the parents are concerned, these are extremely challenging times, no matter what kind of a family you have and no matter how much domestic support you may have. it is
Mhm.
very, very difficult to be dealing with very young children all the time inside the closed four walls. It is very difficult.
Absolutely. I agree.
Without, yeah, and therefore, I think the reliance on devices has drastically gone up while we were all hoping and trying not to allow that to happen. What will you do? You're so exhausted from just living a life inside the four walls that you do,
Mhm.
you know, let the child have the phone for a longer time, the iPad for a longer time. How else do you keep the child entertained? How do you keep
Of
the child
course.
busy? Yeah.
Mm.
So then schooling is happening online. The whole joy of, you know, getting ready, wearing your uniforms, having the ID and having your shoes polished and going in the school van or the school bus, those are all experiences that children are not having, right? So everything that would contribute and enrich you as an individual is on hold. I'm saying it's is on hold. I hope it is on hold and it doesn't become a, you know, a decade long struggle. So
Mm.
yeah, all of this is going to impact in some way or the other.
Yeah, a lot of it is, I'm sure, must have been mentioned in the Freudian theory, ego, superego, and the stages of the childhood stage and all this. There is a reason why a child is being sent to school at an age of 4 or 5 years, because that time, again, as per my understanding and my Google knowledge, it's like the child is prepared now to prepared, and in fact, more they are supposed to interact socially, meet people, learn to sit in a line, learn to behave with others, sharing and caring. That all school used to bring in,
Yes.
especially given the fact that we are living in nuclear families these days. And now that the whole that concept is totally entirely missing with everything online, there is no touching, there is no hugging, like you said. So yes, it's gonna be really difficult for them, I'm sure. Thank you,
Yes.
Sujata, for answering that. And yes, so like I'll ask you here: Is this a trend? Is this a trend? And what do you think? There's going to be a long-term impact of this trend, Sujata?
Which one you're saying? Trend of the
What do you?
COVID related issues? Is that what you're
Yes,
saying?
yes,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. That's what I said even earlier.
Mm,
It is going to have some kind of an impact. Although I don't know how to predict or what to do. I think we as it is, we've moved to a state of being very isolated. I think
mm.
this is just going to aggravate it a lot more. That's what I feel. The sense of a disconnection, the sense of not being connected to other human beings, to our tribe, to our community. I think that's going to add. Although many of us may be very much connected on WhatsApp and Facebook
Yes,
and this group and that group, that's different. That's
yeah,
different from.
technology has played a very big role, I'm sure. Like again, I think last time also I was mentioning it in this show, or probably another show, that I was in fact happier to see. I hosted my child's birthday a month,
Mhm.
2 months back. It was on a Zoom party. It was a Zoom party in the new trend, and I was able to actually get 50 relatives on board, which I could not have done in physical life. Like hardly 10 to 11 children must have joined. Now his nana, his nani, his dada, dadi, mama, mami, friends from across the countries, the Bangladesh and Pakistan, and so many places people joined to wish him,
Yeah.
to talk to him. So that was that. I think that has played a major role. Yeah.
Yes. 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 So it has its plus points as well.
Mhm.
I think the long term impact, we'll have to see what happens. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. So that's gonna stay because I now we don't know. The trend is trend as in terms of COVID. It is changing every day, every minute. And one day they say there is a vaccine. Now they say there is not a vaccine. Then third day they will say the vaccine is not required. And fourth day they will say there was no pandemic at all. So we really do not know where this trend is
So
heading to.
I want to say something on this. Okay.
Yes.
So the way we are handling the pandemic is typical of how we have been handling everything in life. See, anything that happens in life is part of a whole system. It is not some isolated thing, right? So the pandemic has happened, Corona has infected you, so go find a vaccine and it'll be treated. But you know, can we look at how did it happen? Why did it happen? How come it's affecting me this way? How come somebody else is affected in a different way? What else is there? What does it have to do with your body, your overall health, your immunity, your your lifestyle practice, your relationship to food, your mental health. There are so many components that go into this, but we don't look at all that. We just don't look at all that. We just want that 1:1, the direct, simplistic cause effect equations we want for everything. But nothing is so singularly related in life, right? Everything is interconnected. In fact, they use the phrase web of life. So we have things like the butterfly effect, yeah, where one butterfly flutters its wings on one side of the earth and the other side of the earth can have a volcano. So when we are so deeply, so intricately interconnected, how can we, deal with anything in singularity where you just, say, oh, they're fighting, it is because of this. No, it is never so simple. It's not like that. So can we develop a more inquiring attitude? Can we develop a more seeking attitude, more introspective attitude to understand what all is going into creating what's happening? So we have become a culture which fights with the symptoms. We are not a culture which looks at the root causes of anything. We just want to get rid of the symptom. That's it.
Yes.
Yeah. So there are mosquitoes in my community. We will fog every evening or every 2 days, every 3 days.
But
We will not look at
cause of the mosquitoes.
Yeah, will not look at the fact that just outside the boundary there is all this, what do you call that, those water bodies, stay stagnant water bodies that are there. So either we have to do something as a community, or at least
yes, we do not take the initiatives of clearing those water bodies and all. We'll expect the fogging to be done every day. It's a classic example you mentioned, Sujata. Every day we will expect the fogging to be done, and one day the society misses to do the fogging. All the residents will be out on the street that they're not doing the fogging.
Yes, yes, that's what I'm saying.
But they will not take the measures themselves.
Yes, and also we forget to realize that that is causing something else, right? So there will be a couple of kids in the community who will have some allergy to the fogging. So this approach of somehow fight with the symptom and create yet another problem in fighting with the symptom is a classic new modern world approach to everything, including medicine, health, including ecosystem problems everywhere. So I think it's a call to look at all of those.
Yeah, Sujata, I think I missed a question from, we have a viewer here, Miss Vishakha Gaikwad. She's talking about expecting solution, questions to tackle with VUCA. And we are coming to it, Miss Vishakha, in a short while. We are taking this up in the last segment of our conversation. So Sujata, that almost wraps this lot of things which we talked about. And we've seen there are challenges. We were talking about the challenges, the causes, the factors. We've talked about all these now, but entering into the final stage of this particular session, can you tell how can we, what can we do to minimize these challenges? The challenges are always there. Uncertainty challenges, so again, a favorite quote of mine I'll add here. When the only thing that's certain about life is uncertainty, then why think hard on something beyond our control? So challenges are always going to be there. But again, like we were talking about the mosquito example, what are the solutions which we should adopt to tackle with a little more in detail, Sujata? That will highlight more.
Yes. So let's go to slide number 5, Preeti. Because I want to explain a few things before we, in order to answer your question. Your question was, these problems have always been there. What do we do about it now? Yeah. Right? So slide number 5 has to do with the nature of conflict. Okay, so this is fine. This is the slide. Yes. So if you can click a little more, the things will come. Yes. So please wait. So here we are talking. What I want to highlight here is, in order to address something, you need to first of all understand what you're dealing with, so that then you can work with it in a more effective way. Just as you said, VUCA was coined so that we can address the issues better. Same thing here. So if we can understand two things: the nature of relationship and how conflict actually serves a relationship. If you can understand that, that would be good. So we begin any relationship, work relationship, professional, personal, intimate, marriage, doesn't matter. It begins with a real or an imagined sense of connection. I'm saying imagined because sometimes in an arranged marriage, you just enter. That's it. The connection is a given because of the ceremony that has happened. Then that leads inevitably in a short or a long while to the next stage of conflict, of a relationship, which is to do with conflict. So if you can click the next button, then it takes you to the next level or next stage in the relationship, which is conflict. Now, people tend to get very, very afraid of conflict because it's unpleasant, and they will do every possible circus, every possible gymnastics to avoid it. And all that does is, all that avoidance of conflict does is, it simply shoves it elsewhere. Either it will show up in a more perverted and more intense form, or it will keep showing up in tiny spurts here and there all through the relationship. So there is no point in trying to get rid of conflict or avoid conflict. You have to understand that it is a roadway or a portal or a doorway to something else, which takes us to the third stage in a relationship, which has to do with chrysalis. Chrysalis, if you know, is the cocoon stage of the butterfly. Yeah, it's the stage where the pupa weaves a cocoon around itself using its own saliva and sits inside it, very tight, very dark, very moist, very depressing and very terrible. But it is getting prepared to emerge from it in a better form, which is the butterfly, right? It's only when you do that are you ready for genuine, deep interaction and relationship with a person, which takes us to the fourth stage, which I call communion. So these are the four stages of the relationship. Connection, which is more at an interactional and transactional stage, which inevitably brings up conflict. As I said, whenever you're engaging closely with someone, your demons and their demons will come out and play. Right. That becomes an opportunity for you to go inwards to understand, what am I doing and what am I failing? What are my omissions? What are my commissions that are contributing to this? I'm not saying that you need to blame yourself or take full responsibility for the trouble. It is about what is your contribution to the problem, which is the chrysalis stage, which then takes you to the stage of communion. That's the fourth stage. Yeah. Now, if you keep going further on the PPT, I think we talk, yes, that's what allows deep relationship to happen. And the axis of chrysalis and conflict, please click the next button. Okay, we have the axis of connection and communion, which is the stage of rest of the relationship. Meaning, in the stage of connection and in the stage of communion, the relationship is at ease, it is in repose, it is at rest. So it's all good. Nothing, no problems are happening. But the other axis, which is to do with chrysalis and conflict, is the growth axis of the relationship. It is in the conflict and in the going inwards, turning inwards, that growth is possible. Individual growth will then contribute to the growth of the relationship. And as always, all these stages run through each other. They are deeply interconnected with each other. The next slide, the next click will show that. In an infinite loop, they feed each other, they nurture each other, and they reinforce each other. Yeah. So this you need to understand about what to do with conflict. You should not run away from it. You should take it as, okay, let me go inside and check, what did I do? How did I contribute? Yeah. This is not about self-blame. This is not about being a martyr. This is not about being a saint. This is not about applying spirituality to this. This is simply about, in the interactions, there is something which you are not playing by the rule, something that you're not following correctly, that is creating that. Yeah. So that's the opportunity. Now, if you go to the next slide, which I think, Preeti, you're familiar with, we had used this last time as well. This slide talks about the 5 pillars of intimacy. Intimacy doesn't necessarily have to do with physicality or sexuality. Intimacy has to do with the experience of being deeply seen and deeply understood by anyone. Intimacy is possible with anyone. So, for example, in a therapeutic relationship, when I am listening quietly and deeply to the client as they speak about their own life, that moment, that hour itself is an extremely intimate time. Yeah, same way when you're listening to a great speaker, a great poetry, anything that completely engrosses you is an intimate moment. Yeah, so for any relationship to work, to bring in this intimacy is very important, and it has 5 pillars. So one, the foundation is exclusivity. That I always define as, in this moment, can you be 100% available with your undivided attention to the moment and to the person in front of you, without devices, without distractions, without anything else on your mind? When you're speaking to someone, can you only speak and not do anything else? When you're listening, only listen, not do anything else. That is what is meant by exclusivity. The next pillar is respect. Respect is defined as giving a regard and positive, look to a person. Not positive look, a sense of unconditional recognition or regard, simply because that person exists, not because of their status, age, location, money, nothing. Just because it's a human being. Can you look can you provide that respect? Can you bring that respect in the way you interact with the person? The next pillar has to do with care. Care has to do with the understanding of what the other person needs, what they want, what they expect. Sometimes they express it, sometimes they don't, but your own understanding of it, your clarification of it, checking with them if your understanding is right, and then trying to meet that need to the best of your ability, or being forthright and honest enough in saying that you're not able to meet that need. So that level of transparency in the delivery of your role, in meeting the expectations of that role, is what translates into care. Yeah. The next pillar has to do with trust. Trust, in a way, is a no-brainer, but in a way is the most fragile component of a relationship. I'm not speaking of extreme situations like lying, cheating, betrayal, adultery, and not those kind of things. I'm infidelity. I'm just talking about, is there a congruence? Is there a consonance between what you say and what you do? That's all. This has to do with how do you build your credibility by matching your word with action. So you say what you mean, and you mean what you say, and you do what you say. That's it. So the more you deliver in that way in the relationship by speech and action, the more trust you credit into the relationship, and more trustworthy you become. Yeah. And the last pillar has to do with commitment. Commitment is the position of, now that we are both together in this relationship, no matter what shows up in the path, we both will handle it together as a team from the same side of the net, and not as adversaries playing on the opposite side of the net. So it doesn't matter what. It could be good things, it could be difficult things, bad things, ugly things, but it's a commitment to be together, to look at the world and the issues together. That is what commitment means, right? And once again, these also are actually derived from the 5 elements model. And like all those models, this is an interactive model where they are infinitely interconnected by the loop that runs through them. One feeds the other, one reinforces the other, sometimes one can complete the other. As you start not keeping respect in the relationship, your care stops having any significance to the other person, then the other person will not feel as committed in the relationship, then some trust will go away, then you will not be exclusive while being with each other. So it can also go in a downward spiral, but it can also go in an upward spiral. And as I said at the beginning of the talk, all these models are both, they're remedial models as well as restorative models, meaning they can capture the issue as to where is the problem in the relationship, and they can also give you the medicine about what to do in which aspect of the relationship. Yeah. So if you do this, if you can click the next two buttons, if you do this consistently, intimacy is absolutely possible. Even if you don't look at intimacy as a goal, decent, productive, peaceful, harmonious relationships are possible if you understand these two things, that conflict is inevitable, but there's a way to deal with it. If this can be done, I think most of us will be good enough and safe enough. So hope that answers your question, Preeti.
Absolutely beautifully explained, Sujata. That was really wonderful, and I am reminded of that table model we talked about last time. That also
Right.
had an infinity loop. So
Yes,
that
yes.
seems to be quite a bit of your favorite now. So after all this conversation, I mean, not I don't know whether it is much related to the context of VUCA. I'll ask you here: is the VUCA world impacting your profession in psychotherapy? Just,
Yes.
just an adding
Yes,
comment.
of course. Yes, of course. So I think in one of our previous conversations also I had said last 10 to 15 years, there's been a massive rise in the number of people seeking therapy.
You said it last time also.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that is
numbers
there.
have
Now,
surged.
in the last 10 months, it's just gone through the roof. It's
Yes,
just
of
gone
course.
through the roof. Everyone is having some kind of issue or the other. Even the corporates have been reaching out a lot more, asking for something for their employees in the space of home, personal health, mental health, relationships, family management, parenting, all kinds of things. So yeah, there is an impact on that as
Positive, I hope.
well. Yeah,
In
like
terms
I
of,
said, like I said, in my profession, I always say, when people say, "Oh, I'd love to meet you," I always say, "I hope not." Yeah, and
yes,
then
you were strict.
no news is good news. No news is good news. If a client has taken a few sessions and they've vanished, and like, okay, wonderful, that's a good news. But then, yeah, I mean, it depends. Therapists are doing well, but it is not. Not an indicator of a healthy society, right? That's a
No,
problem.
yeah, like in fact, last time also you were saying that, you were saying, no, कि, telephonically ही काफी कुछ, you're able to manage, and your personal style of working is meeting is the last resort. If required, you do accommodate, meeting and therapy, giving the therapy in person also. Like you said, you would prefer not, because I'm sure you must be quite loaded then, everybody comes up and speaks to you about, plethora of issues in a single day. I'm
Yeah.
sure you'll need a therapist soon then. just, just kidding. Okay, so I mean, again, after all this conversation which we've gone through, we've seen there are a lot of relationships. Again, relationships we have seen a lot of elements. Trust is there, loyalty is there, commitment, exclusivity, respect, everything you talk. So, in just as a last comment for the before we wrap up the show,
Mhm.
one single thing you would say out of all these elements: trust, care, commitment, respect, and what is that one single thing you think needs? It's more like I'll tell you the reason why I'm asking this. When I was preparing for this session, so I was reading about VUCA in terms of organization and business management, business world. So there was a HBR study. There were few
Mhm.
HBR articles also, and there was few other reputed journals articles also. They were talking about trust as the
Mhm.
key
Main.
component. So
Yeah.
there were studies available on reputed online scientific journals which were talking about, eventually they were talking about, everything aside, trust is the key component which in organizational setup also, in terms of a changing scenario, was the most crucial element. So in relationships, I know, I'm sure you'll say the same too, but I would like to hear it from you. One single
Sure.
factor.
So I'd like to preface it.
Yeah.
Trust is all four components are important. Trust looks like is the most important. So I agree with that. I agree with that.
Mhm.
However, in the absence of exclusivity, that is also useless. That is also meaningless.
Yeah, you were
In
talking
the
about a
way,
balance.
in the
The
way, yeah,
balance is to be
yeah,
maintained. Yes.
in the way I define exclusivity. See,
Hmm.
for example, I'm thinking I want to build trust with you because that will keep our business going very well. But
Hmm.
whenever we talk, I'm really not even present. I'm not even listening. I'm busy looking at my phone. I'm talking to somebody else. I'm trying to finish up an email. in that absence of the exclusive attention to you in this moment, I have already undermined trust. Yeah. So trust comes as the icing on the cake. The basic cake is exclusivity. That is why I have put it as a foundation. It is, people try to inculcate it through practices like mindfulness and presence and executive presence, this and that. But it is about basically being here 100% right now, no matter what that now is. Yeah. So if you can actually nurture that, the other four things somehow come from it, they do. If you can be committed enough to be here 100%, you will automatically be respectful. You will also keep your word and congruence between your word and action. You will also care. You will show your care, and you will build commitment. It is a natural unfolding of that. So I would say trust is critical, but even more critical to make trust happen, you need exclusivity. I think in a general language, let me use the word presence. Unless you have 100% presence, then the rest of it has no meaning actually. Yeah.
Presence will give rise to that commitment and eventually the trust.
Everything comes from that. Yeah, everything. So, and the presence is not just to the other person. Please understand that your ability to be present to the other person is directly related to how present you can be to yourself. By yourself, I mean, if something's happening to you, are you registering it? Are you noticing it? Are you able to recognize? Are you able to give a name to it? Are you able to resolve it for yourself? Or do you care enough about yourself to go ask somebody for help about it? So presence to yourself will slowly translate into presence to the other person. So that's important. Yeah.
Yes.
So this is one of the things that happens in love, or at least the early stages of love. It just pumps you with so much presence. The other person is giving you that kind of attention. You're giving that person attention. You're basking in each other's attention. That is what presence is, right? So when that is there, everything else goes very well, right? You will be respectful, you will be trustworthy, you will act with care, you will be committed, all that will go on. You take away attention, you take away that blast of attention. That is what happens over a period of time.
That's what happens precisely.
You stop paying the high quality 100% attention to the relationship, and everything starts depleting. So I hope that is understood.
Totally understandable. Yes, very well, very well. So thank you, Sujata. Thank you so much for yet another insightful session, I would say. Hoping the viewers also had an enriching experience. And I would say goodbye with this. If we think that the pace of change is very fast right now, we need to realize one thing. Today, we are experiencing the slowest pace of change will experience for the rest of our lives. So embrace the uncertainty, enjoy the beauty of becoming. When nothing is certain, anything is possible. So shukran and thank you so much, everyone. Have a good night and a great life ahead. Stay healthy, stay safe. Wishing you all beautiful bonding with the ones you love and the ones who mean the most to you. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.